The human soldier didn't plan to find a child on the battlefield. His name was Captain Ryan Hawley, and he had been sent to destroy an enemy outpost in the dense jungle of planet Arvas. The war between Earth and the Threxian Empire had turned brutal. When Ryan's team stormed the command station, they found only wreckage, blood, and silence. But deep inside the rubble, something moved. It wasn't a weapon or a trap. It was a little girl hiding behind a shattered console, her silver hair matted with dust and her alien skin trembling with fear. She didn't speak his language, but her glowing blue eyes locked onto his. She was clearly not a soldier. She was young, maybe 6 or 7 in human years, wearing a torn ceremonial robe. The crown-shaped pendant around her neck shimmered faintly as she crawled forward, reaching out with a shaking hand. Ryan knelt down and whispered softly. Against every military order, he lifted her into his arms and called for emergency evac. He had no idea who she was, but his instincts told him she was important. Maybe royalty, maybe a hostage, maybe a secret too dangerous to leave behind. The evacuation shuttle arrived minutes later, and Ryan carried the alien girl into safety. The war didn't stop. It only got worse. But the strange little girl vanished from all records after that day. Even Ryan was told not to ask about her again. Years passed. Ryan left the military. Earth and the Threxian signed a shaky peace. Everyone tried to forget the horror. But Ryan couldn't forget the child with the glowing blue eyes. He dreamed of her sometimes standing in fire, calling his name, her voice clearer than it had ever been in real life. He never told anyone. He just remembered until one day he was summoned. A royal invitation arrived at his door, delivered by 2 armored figures that didn't speak. They only bowed and offered him a strange silver scroll sealed with the crest of an alien house he didn't recognize. The message was short. The Queen of Arvas summons the human named Ryan Hawley. Your presence is required on the eve of her ascension. It was signed with a single name, Alira. That name hit him like a punch. He had never known the little girl's name, but in his dreams, that's what she had always called herself, Alira. He didn't understand why a queen would summon a forgotten human soldier. But deep inside, something told him it was her. The girl he saved. The girl the galaxy had erased. Now she was a queen. The shuttle that took him to Arvas was unlike any ship he had seen. Smooth and silent, guided by strange light and symbols that shifted on the walls. The guard said nothing. The journey felt like a blur. When he arrived, a crowd of armored warriors parted to make way. And there, at the end of the golden corridor, stood a figure in shining armor, crowned with sapphire gems, her silver hair braided like silk. She was no longer a child. She was a queen, tall, radiant, powerful. But her eyes, the same glowing blue eyes, watched him with something fierce and soft. She stepped down from the throne, each step echoing in the silent hall, and stopped just inches from him. Ryan stood still, his hands were shaking. Then she spoke, in perfect English. You saved me when no one else would. You carried me when I was forgotten. You gave me a second life. And now, I have only one thing to ask of you. Her voice didn't tremble. It rang like a promise, royal and raw. The guards lowered their heads. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Will you stand beside me again, not as a soldier, but as my king? Ryan didn't know what to say. The queen's question hung in the air, heavier than any command he had ever followed. He had faced war, death, betrayal, but this moment felt more terrifying than all of that. Her voice was calm, but her eyes told a different story. They weren't just royal. They were pleading, hoping, and deep down still that same little girl he once pulled from fire. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked around. The guards weren't surprised. It wasn't a trap. This wasn't some political test. This was real. She meant every word. Alira, the queen of an alien world, had waited years to find him again. Not to thank him and walk away, but to keep him, to hold him close forever. I'm not a king, he said quietly. I was just a soldier. She stepped closer. You were a king to me when I had no home, no people, and no future. You saved me, Ryan, not because of duty, because of kindness. My people owe you everything. But I owe you more than that. I owe you my heart. Her hand slowly reached for his, uncovered, glowing faintly with energy, not deadly but warm. He took it. The hall erupted in light. A circle of alien energy swirled around them. It wasn't just tradition. This was a bond ritual, sacred, ancient. The crowd of warriors lowered to one knee in silent respect. Ryan didn't understand their ways, but he knew something big had just begun. Illyra looked at him with a strange kind of joy and sorrow, like someone who had waited her whole life for a single moment. Later in the royal chamber, Illyra told him everything. After he rescued her, secret Threxian agents had hidden her away, fearing that the child queen might be used as a political weapon. But she escaped them. She wandered. She learned. She survived. And eventually, when the old regime collapsed, she returned to claim the throne. But all along, she had searched for the human who had once saved her without asking anything in return. You were the only thing that felt real, she said. The galaxy is full of liars and power games. But you were brave when no one was watching. That's the kind of king this world needs. Not someone born into power, someone who earned it. Ryan listened, unsure how he had become the center of a story far bigger than himself. He asked if the people would accept him. She smiled and said, "They already have." The moment I announced your name, they celebrated. You're not just a hero to me. You're the hero of our rise, a symbol of unity between our worlds. But Ryan had one more question. And if I say no? Her smile faded, but her voice stayed soft. Then I remain queen, alone, and I accept your choice. But I will still honor you forever. I will never forget what you gave me when I was no one. He could see in her eyes that she meant it. That night, Ryan stood on the high balcony, watching twin moons rise over the glowing city. Alien ships danced in the sky. Armored guards moved like statues, and somewhere behind him, Illyra waited in silence. He closed his eyes and thought of the battlefield, the wreckage, the small girl reaching up to him with trembling hands. He didn't save her for glory. He saved her because she needed someone, and now maybe the galaxy needed someone again. He turned, walked back inside the chamber, and spoke without fear. I'm yours, Illyra, not just as king, as the man who will never leave your side again. The next morning, the palace changed. Rumors spread across the capital like fire in dry wind. The human who once vanished from history was now standing beside the queen. Some called it a sign of peace. Others whispered of scandal, rebellion, and ancient laws being broken. But Illyra didn't flinch. She held Ryan's hand as they walked through the golden halls, passing alien nobles, warriors, and advisors who bowed low but eyed him with curiosity and doubt. The council chamber was filled when they entered. 12 elder lords stood in a half-circle, dressed in ceremonial robes with glowing markings on their shoulders. Their faces were hard to read, but none of them smiled. Illyra raised her voice with royal grace and introduced Ryan. This is the one who saved my life, the one who gave me hope before I had a crown. He has agreed to stand at my side, not as a servant, but as my equal. As your king. A silence fell so sharp it could cut steel. Then the eldest counselor stepped forward. His voice echoed cold through the chamber. Your Majesty, this human is not of our kind. The laws forbid union with outsiders. His presence threatens the bloodline and the balance of our alliances. You risk everything for someone who doesn't belong. Illyra didn't blink. Then, the laws will change, because I say so. Her voice cracked like thunder. "And if they will not change, then I will break them myself." Ryan said nothing. He stood beside her, calm and unshaken. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. The guards at the chamber walls didn't move, but their eyes watched the counselors closely, as if they too were waiting to choose a side. The eldest counselor's eyes narrowed. "Then prepare yourself, Queen Illyra, because your enemies will not be as gentle as we have been today." That night, the first attack came. Not in the palace, but at the city gates. A massive explosion shook the lower levels. A group of masked rebels had used stolen tech to breach the outer defense. Illyra and Ryan were rushed to the war chamber. Holograms lit up the table, showing fires and scattered forces. Ryan scanned the readouts with a soldier's eyes. He didn't wait for orders. "I'm going down there," he said. Illyra grabbed his arm. "No, you're not a soldier anymore." He looked into her eyes and replied, "That girl I saved would. She have wanted her king to hide." She released him, but her fear was clear. Ryan suited up in battle armor forged from alien steel, custom fit to his frame. A royal crest burned into the chestplate. He took command of the forward squad and deployed into the chaos. The city streets were filled with fire, smoke, and rebel drones. But Ryan moved like a ghost through them, efficient, fearless, commanding both respect and fear. He didn't kill recklessly. He ordered restraint. He captured the rebel leader alive. When he returned, wounded but alive, he carried not just victory, but a message. The Queen's choice is not weakness. It is strength. "I didn't take this crown. She offered it. And now I'll defend it with my life." The people of Arvas saw it all. Across screens and sky broadcasts, his bravery became legend. And in that moment, many stopped seeing him as an outsider. In her private chambers, Illyra waited with quiet dread until the doors opened. Ryan stepped through, covered in ash and blood, but alive. She rushed to him, touched his chest gently, and whispered, "You could have died." He smiled, tired but proud. "Then I would have died beside my queen." She held him longer than she should have, and for the first time since her coronation, she allowed her tears to fall. The next day, the council did not speak of rebellion. Again, peace returned to the capital, but it was uneasy. The city lights burned bright, and the royal banners flew proudly, yet tension hung over the palace like a hidden storm. Ryan had gained the respect of many, but not all. Hidden voices whispered behind tall walls. Some noble families still saw him as a threat. Others feared what a human king might bring. But Illyra stayed firm. Her word was law. And her heart had already chosen. In public, she stood tall, cold, and queenly. But in private, when the long nights returned and the stars rose high above the towers, she was quiet. With Ryan, she didn't need to act royal. She would sit beside him in silence, watching the stars, her hand resting near his. She had ruled armies and planets, but when she looked at him, she seemed like the same girl from long ago, someone still searching for safety. One night, she brought him to the sacred chamber of memory, a room filled with glowing crystals that sang when touched. Each crystal held a moment from her past, captured in perfect detail. She showed him the memory of the day he rescued her, the chaos, the fire, his voice calling her to run. She turned to him, eyes shining, and said, "I kept this memory alive because I knew one day I would need to remember why I survived." Ryan didn't speak. He walked to the crystal and placed his hand on it. The image swirled and shimmered, then slowly changed. It became a new moment, Illyra standing in her coronation robe, placing the royal crown on his head. Her voice echoed, "As queen, I choose him. Not just for the throne, but for my soul." Illyra gasped, "You added this?" Ryan nodded. "If I'm going to be part of your story, I want it written in light." Their bond deepened in ways words could not explain. But danger still stirred beyond the walls. A distant star system had declared rebellion, backed by the same enemies who once tried to kill Illyra as a child. The Arva's throne had many enemies, and now they saw Ryan as a weak point. A soft target. An outsider without blood ties. Illyra's generals urged her to remove him from command. Send him home, they said. He is a symbol, not a warrior. But Illyra's eyes turned to steel. He is more warrior than any of you, she said. He fought for this world before it was even his. If you question him, then you question me. Ryan didn't defend himself. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than their words, but inside he felt the pressure. He didn't want to be a burden. He wanted to earn his place every day. So he asked Illyra for permission to lead the envoy to the rebel system, not as a king. As a soldier once more. She hesitated, torn between her love and her duty. But in the end, she nodded. If you go not as my king, you go as my blade. He smiled. Then I'll strike true. Before he left, she kissed his forehead, not as a queen, but as the girl who once hid in his arms. The journey to the rebel system was long and dangerous. Ryan commanded a strike ship with a small but elite crew. Many of them were skeptical, but they watched him closely. He didn't bark orders. He led by example. He trained with them, ate with them, fought beside them. Slowly, doubt turned into respect. And then something unexpected happened. A rebel transmission came through. They didn't want war. They wanted to speak to the human king himself. Ryan agreed to meet, alone, in a neutral zone. It was a risk, but he believed in something Illyra had once told him. Real power isn't in fear. It's in trust. So he walked into the chamber, unarmed, wearing the crest of the crown she had given him. The rebels stood in shadows. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Vrek, stepped forward and said, "You're not like the others. Why should we listen to you?" Ryan looked him in the eye and answered without fear, "Because I'm not asking you to kneel. I'm asking you to rise with us." The rebel leader Vrek stared at Ryan for a long time. His face was hard and weathered, covered in old battle scars. He had fought the royal army for years, lost family to the war, and trusted no one. But Ryan didn't flinch. He stood tall, not with pride, but with purpose. He wasn't there to beg. He was there to show another path. "You saved the queen once," Vrek finally said. "Why would you stand beside the throne now?" Ryan stepped closer and said, "Because she's not the tyrant they told you she'd become. She's the future, and so are you." Vrek didn't reply. But he didn't attack either. That was the first sign of hope. Ryan spent 3 days in the rebel zone, not as an enemy, but as a guest. He listened to their stories, their pain, their losses. Many had been betrayed by the old regime before Illyra took the crown. They didn't hate her. They feared the return of those who once ruled. Slowly, Ryan spoke of the queen not as a weapon of power, but as someone who had been hunted, forgotten, and who rose because someone once showed her kindness. Back in the capital, Illyra was restless. Every moment Ryan was gone stretched like a blade over her heart. Her advisors told her to prepare for war. "If the rebels kill him, it's an act of war," they said. But she silenced them. "If they kill him, it's because we failed to make peace." She believed in Ryan not just as a warrior, but as a bridge. She watched the skies each night, hoping for his signal to return. Then it came. A light in the shape of the royal crest beamed across the sky above the city. Ryan's ship entered orbit, and with him came not prisoners, but guests. Vrek and his inner council walked beside him, unarmed. Illyra met them at the landing bay herself, in full armor, but without her guards. "You come as enemies or as allies?" she asked coldly. Vrek bowed low and said, "We come as men ready to listen. Because your human king reminded us what true rulers look like. The following days were filled with negotiation, old anger, and deep wounds. But Ryan remained at Alira's side, not to speak over her, but to support her. Together, they formed a peace treaty that didn't erase the past, but gave the rebels a seat in the new future. The treaty was signed under the twin moons, in front of both armies. And for the first time in decades, no weapons were raised. After the ceremony, Alira and Ryan walked alone through the royal garden. The flowers glowed in the dark, and the soft hum of peace filled the air. She looked at him and asked, "How? Did you convince them?" He smiled. "I didn't. I just reminded them that you're not the throne. You're the girl who survived the fire. And that girl saved a world." She leaned into him gently, and he held her hand without words. Their love was no longer a secret. The people saw them not as a queen and her outsider king, but as two souls who had carried each other through war, loss, and doubt. Together, they had not just ruled, they had healed. But power always draws enemies. In the dark, beyond peaceful stars, something older and colder had seen their rise. Something that hated human blood. Something that once believed the child queen would never survive. A hidden enemy, long thought dead, began to stir. An ancient warlord exiled into the void now learned the truth, that the child he failed to destroy had become queen. And worse, she had chosen a human as her mate. His wrath would not come with armies. It would come in silence, shadows, and poison. The galaxy may have found peace, but peace was always the moment before the storm, and Ryan, standing on the balcony with Alira as she rested her head against his chest, knew deep in his heart that something was coming. He didn't know when, or from where, but he would be ready. Because if war was returning, then he would face it not for a crown, not for pride, but for her asterisk. The warning came in the form of silence. No attacks, no messages. Just a royal patrol ship that failed to return. Then another. Alira and Ryan stood before the war table once again, this time with no words. The ancient enemy had returned. His name was Kelthur, a warlord of the void who had once ordered her death as a child. Thought lost in exile, he had waited, watching from deep space. And now he had learned of the human king who stood beside her. Kelthur didn't send ships, he sent a message, burned into the sky with dark energy. You should have died, child queen. Instead, you chose a human. Now you both will burn. Ryan looked at Alira and said, "He's not coming for the throne. He's coming for you." She nodded, her eyes glowing with rage. "Then let him come. I am no longer the girl who ran. And you are no longer the soldier who carried me. We are something far stronger now." The final battle took place on the edge of Arvis's moon, where the first stars of dawn barely touched the silver dust. Ryan led the defense while Alira faced Kelthur alone. Their duel shook the sky. His power was dark, cruel, and ancient. Hers was fire, memory, and light. He struck her down once, twice, but she rose again, blood on her lips, strength in her bones. "You tried to erase me, but I was saved by someone who never needed power to be strong." Ryan saw her fall to her knees and ran to her side. Kelthur mocked him. "You love her? Then die with her." But Ryan didn't attack. He didn't scream. He placed Alira's hand over his heart and whispered something only she heard. Her eyes opened wide, and then her entire body lit with royal fire. Not just hers, his energy now flowed into her. The bond they shared was deeper than the void itself. She stood, lifted by his strength, and struck Kelthur down with a blade of light forged from both their spirits. The warlord's final scream vanished into the wind. His army crumbled, his shadows turned to dust. And in that moment, peace returned, not through death, but through love that refused to break. Alira collapsed into Ryan's arms, smiling through tears. "You gave me everything," she whispered. "You gave me a reason to live when I had none." Ryan kissed her forehead, just like he had on the battlefield so long ago. And you gave me something to live for. They returned to the capital as heroes, not of conquest but of unity. The twin moons shined brighter that night. Statues were built in their honor, not of warriors, but of two figures holding hands. The girl who survived, the man who carried her, and the love that changed a world. Illyra ruled with strength and grace, but never alone. Ryan stood beside her, not as an outsider, but as the heart of the crown. And on the day their child was born, half human, half Thruxian, the galaxy watched in awe. A new bloodline began. A living symbol of trust, sacrifice, and the power of one human choice. The throne room echoed with cheers as Illyra held her daughter in her arms and looked at Ryan saying, "She has your courage." He smiled and replied, "And your fire." The galaxy remembered wars, rebellions, and the rise and fall of empires. But the story they told for generations was simpler. It was the story of a little alien girl who lost everything, and the human who saved her with nothing but his hands. It was the story of how love made kings out of broken people. And it was the story of how peace was born not from fear, but from one brave act of kindness. And so, under stars that once watched them burn, they ruled not with iron, but with light.